I'm still thinking about this will thing in relation to Pyro's videos, in which he's kind of arguing for the, if not the material existence of something called the will, then at least its phenomenological existence. And I'd probably agree with that in terms of phenomenology, although I might disagree with some of the details. It does, if we kind of give ourselves a bit of self-reflection, it does feel that there is something like that. But that doesn't mean it exists, does it, of course? I mean, it seems to me that what we're talking about here, the way I would start to frame this, is in terms of folk psychology or naive psychology. Naive psychology or folk psychology being those understandings of what it is to have a mind, what a mind is, prior to experimentation, prior to analysis. You know, it's the kind of assumptions that all of us make as human beings about what's going on in our heads. And there are some consistencies in that across cultures and across, different historical periods, that kind of thing. For example, we seem to be what Bloom calls natural-born dualists. We come into the world and very, very quickly separate ourselves from it. You know what I mean? We very quickly form Cartesian subject-object relationships between ourselves and the world. And it's almost impossible to eradicate that later. You have to go through fairly intense processes of contemplative practice, that kind of thing, to disavow yourself of that very strong sense of being dualistically separated from the world. Because it's part of the operating system, I guess. Let's go this way, pups. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that's laid down very, very early on. And whilst we can run different kinds of programs on top, as I say, it's part of the basic machine code of your psyche. And I think in addition to that basic dualism, there are other components as well which form themselves very quickly, and perhaps constitute this thing called a self, which is separate from the world. And one of the components of this thing called a self, I would say, is this thing called will. It doesn't really exist, or it doesn't exist in any analytic form or any scientifically and empirically verifiable form. There's no bunch of neurons or activation pattern or piece of meat you can point to and say that's the will. All you can say is that there's an emergent effect, something like that, or an artifact, as I would put it, which partly comprises this self thing, and which we call the will. Oh, there's the phone going off. Yeah, I'll come back to this. Anyway, naive psychology.